Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Melanated Files. Today we're joined by Jason Little. He's a sales manager at a BioTech company here in Tokyo, Japan, and we're going to get into his story, so stay tuned for that.
What I've discovered when I deal with people here is if I understand them and understand where they come from, then we can kind of bridge the gap of understanding. I can learn more about them, they can understand about me, but the nuanced ideology and understanding of Black people here in Japan is far different than what we are trained to understand in the United States.
Welcome to the Melanated Files. In this series, we highlight and share the stories of Black people from across the globe. Remember to subscribe to this channel for weekly videos and also follow us on social media for regular updates. Let's get into the interview.
My name is Jason Little. I am originally from Virginia, and for the past few years I've been living in Maryland. And back in 2017, my family and I moved to Tokyo.
Okay. So how long have you been in Tokyo and what do you do?
So I've been in Tokyo for a total of 3 years now.
Okay.
I am the sales and marketing manager for a company named Diogen, which is a biotech company that's located actually in Belgium. And has U.S. offices. And my job was to come over to Japan and establish the local office.
Nice. So how has that been so far? Like trying to get into the Japanese market, has it been challenging? Language barrier? What's that like?
Is crazy, but at the same time, I've learned so much. So basically, the number one rule is what's up is down and what is down is up. It's the complete opposite of what you would expect to do in your own country, where I'm from, America. So a lot of the marketing techniques, a lot of the sales techniques, the sales channel, everything is completely opposite of what you would expect.
Okay. So do you find, so it's more challenging, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like, have you made progress since you've actually started?
Yes, I actually have made a lot of progress. And actually the reason I think I came into the role is because I had a previous experience living and working in Japan and working with Japanese companies for a number of years. So I had a kind of a basis of how the society works and also how companies here operate. Okay. So it kind of gave me a head start. But even still, coming over here and starting from scratch, there's been a steep learning curve. Okay,
so we want to backtrack because you said you were here first.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Like, when was this? What did you do? How long were you here for it the first time?
The first time. Okay.
Yeah.
The first time I came in 2000 and was here for 3 years. I was here for the JET program.
Okay.
And actually, I lived in Kansai. And for about 3 years out in the countryside. So it was a great opportunity to kind of learn the culture, learn Japanese without being, I guess, pulled by, you see the influences in Tokyo to speak English.
Yes, I know that all too well. Yeah.
Then after that, I returned back to the U.S., where I actually went back to the biotech industry. I started working for a Japanese company called Dojendo. They're located in Kumamoto, and they had a U.S. office. And I worked there for about 5 years, and during that time, I was the only non-Japanese member of the office. So I had a chance to really learn what the Japanese companies do as far as the internal processes, how they approach business, how they think about sales and marketing. So that was a very good learning experience to start from. Okay,
so what piqued your interest initially? Like, what was the first thing that said, Japan is a place that I want to visit or live at some point?
Well, actually, long story short, I actually wanted to study Chinese.
Wow. Okay, so like that's what happened.
Yeah, so back in college, wanted to study Chinese. Just so happened that semester there was no Chinese teacher that had been hired for my university. Okay. And one of my dorm mates was taking Japanese, and he was like, "Jason, this class is dead easy. You know, you can get an A in it. You know, the teacher's very nice, very cool." And I'm like, I needed an A. Yeah. And there was no Chinese. I needed a language credit, so I took it, and it was dead easy. It was very fun. I mean, the teacher made it very fun. Okay. So I got in there. Kind of liked it, took a few more classes, and then after that I had a chance to come to Japan for 1 month for an exchange program. Yeah. And when I came over here, I fell in love with everything. I was in Kobe, the city's beautiful, the people are really nice. Yeah. First time outside the country, and I thought I want to come back after I graduate. I want to travel a little bit. So after graduating, I came back over for the JET program.
Okay. It's funny how like just a simple decision like your friend just said, "Oh, this is easier." It wasn't on your radar, and you're like, "Oh, hey, let's just do it." And I think that's something when it comes down to life, Sometimes they're going in one direction. Just something that seems so insignificant leads you in another direction.
That little push changed everything. Wow. I actually, Phil Goldstein, if you listen to this, thank you.
Oh,
He's the one that pushed me in that one direction. So.
All right. So what do you like the most about Japan?
You know, there is a long list. One, the safety. You know, nothing is perfect. No country you go to is ever going to be perfect.
True.
But I don't have to worry about my personal safety. The safety of my children. My wife can go out at nighttime and go shopping. I don't have to worry about being shot. You know, my children can ride the train and go somewhere and come back, and I'm completely confident that I'll see them. The second thing is everything is clean and orderly. You know, it's very hard to put into words how clean things are here. But everything is so clean and orderly that it's on another level. The organization that it requires to keep everything's looking so nicely is just mind-boggling. Yeah,
and it's funny because a lot of people talk about the safety, and they're like, people say safety all the time, but that's, as humans, we want to make sure that we're safe.
I came from the U.S. and even in where we lived in the U.S., it was a very safe area, I would say. You know, kids could go outside and play, but there was still a lot in the environment that was happening around us. Just give you an example. So, you know, the whole gun issue in the United States. Every town that I would have to work in, that I've traveled in, seems to have had some mass shooting incident. Almost, even in the United States, I worked as a sales rep for the BioTech industry. And so I would have to travel to different universities and different cities. So, for example, UVA, the shooting that was down there, I was on that campus, you know, not when it happened. But, you know, all those landmarks are very familiar to me.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, it's just a roll of the dice. You just never know. And, you know, things could happen here anywhere in Japan, but just the level of possibilities is far greater in other places around the world and far lower here in Japan, and that's very appealing.
Yeah, it is, okay? It is. So, on the flip side, what do you like the least? Because I know there's always something, somewhere. Even a little bit.
Well, you know, this is, I would say, a very homogenous society. And so the challenge is working with society, being part of society, and not letting that affect you emotionally. And it's so easy to go to a dark place here.
Wow.
You know, it's so easy to point your finger and say those people are this or that and be judgmental. And so that's the most difficult thing about being here, because you don't see yourself in other people, and you're removed. And the one thing, it's not really about the country, but about myself, that I think all of us have a difficult time of not putting everyone else in a different basket, because our life is difficult.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of times it's justified. But we use that as a basis of judgment, and that turns into anger. And that anger is never quite resolved. And so I think I like that the least about being in this country, is your anger can grow uninhibited.
No, that's serious. That's quite something. What about, like, your black experience, right? Being black in Japan versus, you know, back home. Yes. What's that like?
Being black over here, I'm still a minority. You know, I still get the stares, but I know the stares they're not dangerous. You know, back at home, if you get the stare somewhere, you know, something bad could happen to you, technically. Here, if I get the stares, my life is not in danger. So I've been profiled over here. I've been stopped by the police. I've been stopped in frisks before. I've been stopped by stores, managers, and being suspected of shoplifting.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
But I know once I walk out that store, the police will not shoot me. Right? So that basic level of safety is still there. But, you know, still being black and still being around the world, we still have our challenges, no matter where we go to, wherever we are.
But you'd prefer, like, the black experience, in a sense, in Japan, in terms of safety, versus the States, right?
Right. If I have to deal with it, I'd rather be able to walk away from it.
Yes. Okay. But what do you think is the general attitude? Like, you know, the populace, how do you think they respond to black people? What's the general, you know, prevailing attitude here in Japan?
You know, so my wife, she's kind of my spiritual animal in my journey through Japan, and I've asked her about this as well. You know, how do Japanese people?
So she's Japanese.
She's Japanese.
Okay.
How do Japanese view, you know, African Americans? And she said, well, honestly, a majority of people can't really distinguish African American versus African, European, African. So we're all part of the
black.
The black. And within that black experience is the foreigner. So we're all kind of grouped together as being other.
Okay.
And what I've discovered when I deal with people here is if I understand them and understand where they come from, then we can kind of bridge the gap of understanding. I can learn more about them, they can understand about me. But the nuanced ideology and understanding of black people here in Japan is far different than what we are trained to understand in the United States.
Okay.
We see black and white, and there's a lot of historical reference to that ideology.
Yeah.
And over here, that's lacking. This is grossly lacking. So it's just other. Us and other.
Okay. A lot of people talk about the, I know some Japanese people feel offended by this, where some people are saying, they're ignorant. Like, for instance, or some of them actually are offended when we mistake what they would call curiosity for racism, right? Because some of them are like, look, no, we're not. But of course, we can't paint everyone with the same brush. So some people might be racist, and some clearly are not, right? So it's a toss-up, as I would say, right?
Well, I would even say with that, we maybe, not to say we're at fault, but we need to have a certain understanding of what questions or what things that they're curious about. So, for example, they might ask people about their weight, other women, whereas in the States, we probably wouldn't ask about that. Or, some other countries, people might ask about your income, where we would think, that's kind of offensive, from our cultural reference point.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to understand other people's cultural reference points before we can kind of judge them on their questions as well.
So what are your ambitions? What are your ambitions for life in Japan? Like, where do you see yourself in maybe 2 years from now?
Well, in 2 years, I'll probably be back in the U.S.
Okay.
So this journey around in Japan, my wife and I, we set a deadline, and within that deadline of what we would like to accomplish.
Okay.
So mainly, my job was to come over here and establish not just a local office, but to discover an entirely new group of doing business through the BioTech community.
Okay.
Which is very difficult because things here are very set. There's a lot of tradition. But I came here as kind of a wrecking ball to kind of break whatever traditional, I guess you could say, ideas or methods of doing business here. So 4 years, I accomplished that, and then eventually go back to the United States and then search for new opportunities.
Okay, so could you tell me a little bit more about the business itself? Like, you said BioTech. What exactly is it? And maybe you can just divulge a little bit more.
Okay, so within the BioTech community, you have different type of business models. So the company that I work for, we sell chemicals and reagents and some equipment to researchers.
Okay.
And these researchers are involved with all range of types of research, cancer research, genetics, and a majority of them are located at universities. Okay. From universities, some pharma companies, some contract research organizations. So the idea is that we provide them the products, they do the research, they publish on the research, and it's a cycle that they buy more things. Whereas in Japan, there's a system of a distribution system. I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
I think I understand it.
So within the distribution system, you have the maker, people who make the products. So you sell it to someone in Japan who distributes. And then they have a sub-distributor. And then they may have a sub-distributor. And then that person might sell to the end user.
Okay.
And this is a very established, very rigid system that we have here. And it's one of the things that has prevented, I would say, most foreign companies from really penetrating the Japanese market. Okay. Very difficult to get through because a lot of it is relationship based. A lot of it having multi-layers really increases the prices of products. And unless you really understand how things are interplayed and interconnected in Japanese culture, it's very difficult to penetrate. And so that was my job, to kind of get in and penetrate and force kind of a different change. And we've been pretty successful so far.
Nice. How is it Japanese? How good is it Japanese?
Well, I passed the level 1 a few years ago. But even with that, if you asked me to take the test today, I'd fail it.
Okay, understood.
But I can read scientific papers. I can, I communicate with the
That's
researchers.
really good. Okay.
Yeah, these are one of those things that you don't really study, but you kind of pick up as you're doing the job. You meet with people, they tell you about something new, you do some research, and it just becomes part of your arsenal. So I would say my superpower is kind of, I speak Japanese, and I can pretend not to speak Japanese when necessary.
Okay. You know enough to get by and to,
Right.
So tell me, what's the funniest thing that has happened to you as a black person here? Like, any funny stories? There's usually something that we encounter that we have to laugh about, like only in Japan.
Oh, the funniest. When I used to teach English, the middle school kids were out in the countryside.
Yeah.
And, they couldn't speak English, but, they still wanted to talk to me and joke around. And so they would just call me the most random black names that they could think of, right? Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson. I looked like none of these people. But it was the one black person that they could associate with. Like, hey, Michael Jordan. I couldn't play basketball.
Yeah.
But, it's those little things where they found a connection to make. And I always thought it was kind of funny, and I'd never, pushed back on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't think of anyone else who I look by. So now I'm kind of glad Obama is around, because now it's, you're like Obama. So
yeah,
I'll take that.
It's funny because sometimes people get called a certain name and you're like, there's no resemblance. Like you're looking like, what? Will Smith, you're like, there's no resemblance. And like, where do you see it? And you're like, the point of connection, or in their minds, resemblance is like, we got the same skin.
Yeah.
Or black. Well, if you're black, then you look like all other black people.
Right.
And I guess some of us think the same way. When you see maybe an Asian person or white person, like, maybe not. I don't think I feel that way. I don't think it. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people can really distinguish small differences. Actually, when I was here on Jet a few years ago, I had a friend of mine who was Australian.
Okay.
Very white. Very, very white. We would go hang out. And people would ask us, you guys hang out. It's like, yeah, that's my sister right here. And they're like, really? Wow.
It was a guy?
No, it was a lady.
Oh, a lady. Okay.
So they completely bought it. I was like, yeah. She takes after my mom. And they're like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? We could completely get away with that because people couldn't divorce the idea that, whatever I gave them as the reality, they took that as the new reality.
Yeah. And you're looking at like, okay, well, they're kind of like light, but
they're
pale, but paler. Right, so
they could pass for look nothing alike.
Okay, what's your favorite Japanese food?
My favorite Japanese food, I would have to say, that's tough. Between sushi and okonomiyaki.
It's funny. I've heard like the first time I tried okonomiyaki was a few months ago actually, and I find that it was very filling. I couldn't finish the one I got. Well, okay. I'm like a ramen nut, so wherever I go, I try the ramen. Right.
The reason, there's two reasons I like okonomiyaki. One is kind of a comfort food, especially in Kansai. My wife is from Kobe. So
I see.
Her mom makes it a lot, she makes it a lot. And also where I used to live, there was this little restaurant that was really indiscreet, located in the middle of a rice field, way out in the middle of the town. That's okonomiyaki. And I would just go there, just to hang out and talk to the locals there. And it's more like a comfort food.
In what ways would you say Japan differs from your home country? Like, what do you think is the most significant difference?
The most significant difference?
Apart from the obvious.
I don't want to overgeneralize, but I would say over here there's a tendency to defer to the rules. Everything is rule-based, and there's not really an understanding of why most of the rules exist. But the rules are the rules, and we must obey the rules.
Yeah.
Whereas I would think back in my home country, a big part of effort is to break the rules or find some way to bend the rules. If there's a rule, why is it there? Is it important? Do we need it? If not, then how can we break it? Whereas over here, that's kind of lacking, and that's kind of been my advantage of being over here. Is one, learning and understanding why a rule over here exists, and then trying to bend that as far as possible. And so using my foreigner status to get around that.
Right, Gaijin card.
Right. I Gaijin smash a little bit before. But with that, I try not to break things, but I try to bend as far as possible, knowing that maybe with my status I can get away with that, and I can test the waters. And actually, the company that I'm working with closely, I think they're looking at what I'm doing, seeing how far I go without breaking, And if it's successful, then they'll take that and use that as well. If not, then they'll get rid of it. But I can do that because I'm not here. The expectations are different.
Yeah. What's the best life advice you've received? So we're going into like more, not just Japan-based overall. What's the best life advice you've received?
The best life advice. Wow. It's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
That's a big one.
Right. If there's something that you want to do and you see a way forward, it's better just to do it, get it out of the way, and then apologize for it later.
That sounds like something a salesperson would say. It seems in line with like sales. Like
it is. I mean, but even with that, I mean, that's I've hung out with a lot of salespeople.
Yeah.
But that's helped me a lot, because I've gotten yelled at about a lot of things. But after getting yelled at, there was some movement, some progress. I've been yelled at a lot over the years.
Having said that, what do you think is the most important element when it comes down to sales? Like if someone is watching right now and they want to like go into sales, what do you think is the most important thing, or one of the more important things or most important things when it comes down to being an effective sales person?
I think every culture has their own definition of what a salesperson should be. And being in Japan and working in a Japanese company has been different from my experience in the United States. But I would say honesty. If you can be honest. Maybe a lot of people wouldn't say honesty, maybe being straightforward and strong-willed, but for me personally, honesty. So I don't think I'm a very good salesperson, but I try to be an honest salesperson. And at the end of the day, if someone doesn't buy from me, that's fine. I know in the future, maybe they can introduce me to somebody else, and it opens my life connections to more people by being honest.
At least you never over like sold it, right? So like over promise, under deliver. You're just like, this is what it is. Do you need it? Do you want it? Yes. Okay. No. Fine.
Exactly. Right? For me, that's the type of person who I would like to interact with. So that's the type of person I try to be as well.
Okay, nice. Next one. What if the world was listening, right? What's one message you would share? You had like 15 seconds and everyone was listening to you. Like, what's the one message? Like, it would go to every person. What would you say? What would you say?
Okay. We're all the same on a basic level. We all pretty much want the same thing. And if we can acknowledge that about other people and see ourselves in other people, I think it would drastically change how we interact with them, how we see them, and how we judge them. We end up maybe judging ourselves a little bit harshly and other people less harshly. But yeah, you see yourself in other people first. And that goes a long way.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned in life overall? Like the biggest lesson?
The biggest lesson? Well, family. Family comes first, right? And be true to your family, be true to your dreams. If you want to try something, try it. It's better to try it and fail than not try it. And you don't want to live life with regrets. That's the scariest thing about life. You can always make money, new money. If you lose a job, you can find a new job. But you can never find new time. If you lose your opportunity to do something, and you lose time, you can't go back and recapture that. So take your chance whenever you have a chance.
What's the biggest risk, right, you've taken? Right,
coming over here to Japan, yeah, this has been a huge risk. I mean, I had to give up what I was doing in the States. Had to give up a comfortable lifestyle. Honestly, going back to the States, I don't know what would be waiting for us. But even going back will be a risk. Choosing not to stay here, setting a limit, and saying I want to grow past this. That's also going to be a kind of a jump into the unknown. But it's necessary if I want to grow.
So what's the biggest risk you've taken in life? Because I know a lot of people are risk averse, right? They are terrified of risk. And the truth of the matter is life itself is risky, right? We can never predict the next moment. So what's the biggest risk you've taken?
I would say the biggest risk for me so far was me coming to Japan for my current work experience. In the beginning, not knowing the market over here entirely, having to take the burden of creating an office in a country that I didn't know how business worked entirely. I came over initially all alone, so I'm the only sales and marketing manager over here. There's no one below me, and I had to make a lot of decisions by myself. So yes, this is probably one of the biggest jumps I've ever had to do in my life.
What would you tell people that are watching right now who might want to do something but they're a little bit terrified or scared in terms of like taking risk? Like, what would you tell them? What did you learn from making this jump?
Several things. The first thing is, if there's something that you want to do in life, you need to do it. You need to figure out a way to do it. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't want to live a life of regrets. And the one thing about life is, you can always make more money, you can always find a new job, but you can never make more time. And if you lose an opportunity, the time to do something, you might live a life with regrets. So the best thing is, find an opportunity. If possible, create a plan for it, and then take the risk. You might lose something, but in the end, you'll gain more than what you lose.
If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be? Anything?
If you could change one thing in the world. One thing in the world. As I mentioned before, how we interact with each other. It's very easy to become judgmental. And I find myself being judgmental quite often. And I don't think we really put ourselves in other people's shoes as often as we need to. And I think if more of us thought about life from other perspectives, even people that we vastly disagree with, I think we would find more common ground, at least on a human level. So we all want the same thing. We all want safety. We all want to have an opportunity to eat and live with our families and enjoy life. And I think a lot of us assume that we have to prevent other people from doing that in order for us to be able to do that.
So that's a good observation. The next one is, what is like your proudest accomplishment so far?
I think my family. I love my family. My two boys right now, 6 and 9.
Oh, nice.
We've been able to raise them on 2 continents so far.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay,
so they've been able to go through and experience the school system and life and the world through the eyes of American children, and they're doing it through Japanese children, and then now we'll go back to the States, and we'll repeat the cycle.
Oh, they're bilingual, right?
They're bilingual, they're bicultural. They completely literate in both languages.
Oh, nice. That's good.
So it's really cool.
What's one thing that Japan does really well that you think the world can learn from? Like, there's just one thing that you're like, you know what, if the world should adapt this, it would be better for that country.
I would say that on the most basic level, trains. The system here, if you think about how large Tokyo is and how on time and scheduled everything is with the trains, how clean and how well kept, compared to where I came from in Maryland, close to Washington, D.C., much smaller, on a much smaller scale, train lines, never on time. When you go to the station, they'll tell you the train is arriving in 10 minutes. They won't tell you what time. They'll just say how much longer until the train gets there.
Yeah.
If the world could learn from the Japanese system of, mass transportation, we'd all be happier, much happier people.
I think they know, like, convenience. Like, they know convenience. It doesn't matter what it is. Find an area in Japan, an area in life, or in any society, the Japanese have a way to make it more convenient.
Yes.
I still get lost in the train system. Like, I don't know why in Japan, but in other countries, I find it a lot easier to get around. But in Japan, for some reason,
really? Oh, okay.
even in Shinjuku, I've been through there so many times, but sometimes I'm like, what? Where'd I go?
There's a sprawling underground system of train lines and shops, and it's amazing.
Right?
It's still well organized.
It is. I guess I'm just kind of like directionally challenged or something like that. All right. What's your earliest memory?
My earliest memory. My earliest memory of
just life overall.
4 years old, playing in my room with building blocks. Using my hands with my toys, putting things together.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of stuck with me most of my life. I like to do things with my hands when I have an opportunity. So, that's, I guess, going as far back, maybe 4 years old, just playing.
Oh, wow. What's your favorite place in Japan? Somewhere that you would say is a must visit?
My favorite place? I have 2 favorite places, actually. One in general is Kansai. I love the region. Everything about the region, the people down there, very interactive. They'll tell you what they think, and it kind of reminds me back at home. If someone doesn't like you, they'll let you know. And then Kyoto is my absolute favorite city.
Oh, wow.
And I'm kind of a history buff, and I like culture, and I like to go temple hopping. And for me, Kyoto is everything. There's a little bit of modern there. There's a lot of historical context. A lot of that is missing in Tokyo.
Okay.
Why Japan is Japan. So I would highly recommend, if you, first place, you come to Japan, visit Kyoto.
Where is there a shrine or temple that you think is your favorite?
Let's see. There's Kyomizu. Kyomizu-dera is one of the larger temples towards the east. Very big, but it's very close to a bunch of other smaller temples. Okay. You can take a scenic walk up through there's this shopping area that cuts through the mountain that goes up to the temple, and it just pulls you back into like a time slip. Oh, wow. Like you're walking back in time.
Ah, cool. That sounds good. Like, I don't think I've been there. Like, I've been to, I think it's called, what's it called? What's it called? The one with the tour gates? The tour gates going up. What's that one called? In Kyoto. Yeah, it's not the most popular one where a lot of tourists go, and you go up, it winds up the mountain.
Yeah, I think that's close to Kyomizu.
That's Kyomizu?
That might be Kyomizu.
Oh,
so there's a lot of back streets through there.
Oh, maybe that might be it. Okay. I've been there once. It was very busy, like extremely crowded.
It's crowded. Okay, I recommend slipping down a back street.
Yeah.
You can go through, and let's say you're walking on the main street, and all these real modern buildings. You slip down a street and you'll see like this little indiscreet sign that'll tell you about this building that's been here since the 1500s, the 1400s, and it's still standing. I'm like, wow, this is right off the main strip. So well hidden. It's older than anything that I know, and people walk by it like it's just, my great-great-great-grandfather used to work here. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, what about misconceptions? What do you think is the biggest misconception, or what's a common misconception about Japan?
I think there's a lot. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is through the media. You see a lot of the comedy shows and the commercials, and you think, wow, Japan is just a crazy, crazy place. And especially if you don't speak the language, it's easy to kind of misinterpret and assume that everyone walks around with all this technology and crazy clothes, smacking each other all the time. Where people here are just like anywhere else. Yeah. They want the same things as anywhere else. They have the same technology as anywhere else. The values might be very similar, but I think that's a big conception through the Japanese media. People look at the Japanese people in a certain way.
What do you think? Is there anything that you think in Japan needs more media coverage? Like maybe there's a particular issue or some aspect of society or life here that you think should be broadcast more?
You mean about Japan?
Anything at all about this society that you think is underrepresented, like in the media?
So, as far as the appeal from Japan, that's a very difficult question. I would say Japanese people are well in tune to what's happening outside their own country, more than Americans are in tune to what's happening outside their country.
Oh.
So, in the Japanese media, you have a lot of news and movies and music that comes from overseas, and people here want to learn languages and food, especially around in Tokyo. Whereas if you go to the United States, you have a lot of different people who live there, but we're all in pockets, and we don't have a very good understanding of the world outside our personal circles.
So by even saying that, then it seems like the Japanese people should know more about other people, but it seems like it's maybe not so much the case in reality.
Well, I would say even with all people, everyone knows only as much as what's related to their own personal life, right? If something is directly related to you, then you're bound to learn and study more about it. It goes the same for Americans, the same for Japanese, I think. But I would say on a general level, most of the Japanese people I've interacted with have a better interaction with media from the outside world. It might not be deep, it might not be a deep interaction, but it's far more broad than maybe what we're accustomed to.
So, what about relationship, right? So you're married to, your wife is Japanese, right?
Yes.
So what's that dynamic like? Is there anything that you learned about like a interracial relationship with a Japanese person that you hadn't thought about before? And any advice that you can impart to people who are looking to go that direction?
I was fortunate. My wife, she's my ride or die. And from when we met, we clicked. And she was one of the reasons why I tried to study Japanese. And I think I'm one of the reasons why she tried to study English. there's a lot of cultural difference in how we communicated initially. And one of the things that I've learned is, as an English speaker, we try to fill a gap. Meaning, when there's a moment of silence in conversation, someone has to fill that. And quite often, with how a lot of Japanese people interact, there's an exchange, and then there's a pause. And then there's an exchange, and then there's a pause. And before understanding that, I would interpret that as disinterest. And especially if you're speaking on the phone. Let's say you're talking on the phone, and you're just having a conversation, and the other person goes quiet. Are you still there? Are you interested? Are we still talking? And what's wrong? And so learning those things, those idiosyncrasies between how we communicate was a big step. Other thing is, my wife she should be a lawyer. She's good at arguing in both Japanese and English. And it doesn't matter what language I use, I still lose. Okay. So if we get into it, I have to use English.
Okay.
I have to use English. Yeah. If not, I get completely turned around. But I think over the years, we've kind of developed our own language of how we communicate. I use a mixture of Japanese and English. She uses her mixture of Japanese and English. That I think it's unique to us. We've been married 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So, even within our whole family, we have our own mix pigeon of how we use Japanese and English at home. So, I think it's very interpersonal now. But in the very beginning, just understanding how you, both as an American and as an individual, communicates, and how your partner communicates. Understanding that is the first step, and really, I guess, making a bridge and making the relationship work. Going back to my family, so I've had an experience of bringing my children over to Japan. And I've worked in the Japanese school system, and they've been in the U.S. school system. So I think Americans got to have a perspective about Japan being great at math. They've got such a great education system. They clean their schools. And what I've learned is they're both plus and minuses, and I enjoy getting the opportunity to take both from each school system. And actually, I kind of apply what I learned for my kids from my daily life when I go and work with customers. And I learn way more from my kids than I do from anywhere else.
So, that brings something to mind that we could touch on really briefly. What would you say their experience was going to school in the States versus going to school in Japan? What was that like?
In the States, there's a big push on free thinking and individuality. So the school where my son was going to before coming over here, it's a very good mix of all kinds of kids from different nationalities, different backgrounds. They all spoke a second language from somewhere. His best friend was from Russia. And, everyone was different. So being different in and of itself was not special. But you find your specialness. Everyone found their voice. Whereas in Japan, the classroom is much larger. There's much more of a push on following the rule, being in line, and not being a burden to everyone else around you. You hear a lot of meiwaku kakenai. Don't be a burden to others around you. And this social pressure has been formed in order to not make life bad for other people around you. And so I would say that's the biggest difference. But with that, you learn how to work with a group. And in America, I've noticed, me in a professional capacity, me going through school, and my children as well, we Americans, we have a difficult time working in a group. we can save the world by ourselves, but as a group, we have a very difficult time.
So I guess that's something that we can learn from the Japanese.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take, right? Yes. So it's good to have this individualistic approach, and then this, what would you call it, like a communal or community type thing?
Right. A social obligation. You learn to sometimes sacrifice for the group, work with the group, but still find your individual voice within that group. That's very important.
So any advice for people who want to come here, whether it's to work, to study, or to potentially live? Any advice for them, especially Black people? Because what I find is that some people express, of course, fear of, just because the society is so homogenous, they're like, oh my God, like what is it going to be like? Any advice for people, Black people particularly?
Well, being an African American, we're a minority everywhere we go. So why not here? anywhere we go, we're always going to be the minority, unless we're in a place, if we go to Africa, and even then, we'll still be the Americans. So why not? It's a great place to try, a great place to visit and live if you have the opportunity. It's not a hostile environment. I would say, for me, the easiest way coming over here was through teaching English. You don't have to have any particular skill through it. I graduated from university, applied for a job, and I was on a plane over here. So I would say, as far as getting life experience, is a very good opportunity. You can find out more about yourself, and make contacts. But yes, travel. If not here, somewhere. Got to get out. You have to leave your confines.
Indeed, indeed. So all your time in Japan, right? So for the first 3 years, the current 3 years, so about maybe a total of 6 years so far, is there anything that you've learned from Japan itself, your experience in Japan, that you can sum it up to say, I've learned this?
Every experience is different, and I mean that in the most general way possible. So when I first lived in Japan, I was a single male, single black male. This time coming around, I'm a black male with a family, right, with a mixed family. Before coming to Japan, I lived as a single black male in the United States. And then before coming to Japan this time, I lived as a black male with a family. So every single experience, there was something else that I walked away from, as far as how to deal with the world, how the world looks at me, my responsibilities, how I represent my family, how I represent myself. So I would say that the overwhelming experience that I walked away from is experience every possible situation that you can. Right? Don't say, oh, well, I've done this. I've lived in Japan 3 years as a single male in Tokyo, so now I understand the whole black experience or the whole Japanese experience. There's so many different perspectives that you can taste and feel and touch, and it will change your mind about what you previously thought.
Okay, where can people find you online?
Wow. Actually, I'm not really online. You can find me if you want to buy products through my company. Obviously, if they contact you, you can always.
But you can tell them like the website or where they can find your products and stuff like that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can find more about me if you're interested through diagenode.com. There's not much personal information, but you can always reach out and contact me if you have any questions about my journey or how you would like to get into the same situation. Please let me know. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to share your story or have us visit your region, send us a message on any of our social media platforms or via our website.
That's good.